Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Markets, where we at True Potential give you an insight into what's been happening in asset markets over the past 24 hours. Today, we'll focus in on a number of the data points that were released yesterday. So, firstly, just turning to how asset markets performed yesterday, very much about activity in the equity market, where we saw continued positive performance there, building on that trend over the past few days. Indeed, the technology Nasdaq increasing 1.5% over the day, the S&P up about 0.8%. I think one of the other interesting stories is just around the FTSE yesterday and how the FTSE was up about 1.3, 1.4% on the day. Previously I've talked about the FTSE being sort of movements moved driven by in large part by movements in sterling, euro, sterling dollar exchange rate, so a weaker sterling being positive for the FTSE 100. That wasn't the case yesterday. It was actually driven by some company specific news, with Ocado coming out with very strong results numbers and speaking positively about its business, and a number of other stock specific stories driving the market. But it also did relate to one of the other areas of the market yesterday, and that was the miners and the commodity side of the FTSE 100, which we discussed the Chinese data in terms of retail sales, industrial production, and the export numbers, how that had fed through into a positive session yesterday, and that definitely supported the more commodity exposed names within the FTSE 100. So positive day for those yesterday on the back of stronger economic data from China. Looking at other data points that came out yesterday, there's a number, primarily in the US. We looked at US industrial production, and US industrial production had been moving in a positive trend over the past number of months from the lows in the middle of the second quarter. What did we see yesterday? We saw industrial production actually slow in the US, so it increased over the period 0.4% month on month. That's something for us just to monitor going forward to see how that trend continues to evolve. There are a number of one-off factors that impacted growth in August, primarily around the mining and the oil and gas sector, where there was production curtailments as a result of some of the storms and hurricanes that were experienced. So as that washes out over the next month, it'll be important to see how industrial production continues to evolve. Also yesterday in Germany, we had the zoo, the expectations survey that comes through there of investors, and that was a pretty much nearly an all-time high in terms of their expectations on the future direction of the German economy. So positive indications on the future trends of what's happening in Germany coming through over the coming months. Also wanted just to touch a little bit on the UK and the unemployment report that we saw yesterday. So we saw a tick up in the unemployment rate from 3.9 to 4.1%. I think there's a number of other things that we should reflect on just in the unemployment report and what was discussed there from the Office of National Statistics. In particular, just the number of jobs that have been lost since the beginning of March to the end of August, which looks at some 695 jobs. And that's when we dig into the HMRC data, and you can see how that trend is evolving. So that may, in future months, feed into what's happening in the overall unemployment rate. It was interesting yesterday to hear the Chancellor come out with some indications that there may be some further support packages for businesses and also for employees. So that's something that we'll continue to watch and monitor. That's an interesting thing to think about just in the context of the Bank of England meeting, where the senior economist there, Andy Haldean, is, I think, slightly different perspective to that of the Chancellor, in that he is very much focused on trying to move through and not have the sustaining of companies that maybe shouldn't be sustained. So that's an interesting dynamic to think about when we get details from the Bank of England tomorrow around their thoughts on the economy, future policy direction, etc. Yesterday in markets, fixed interest markets, particularly sovereigns, didn't really do very much. Large proportion of the fact that we've got details from the Federal Reserve coming out this evening, where the market is probably looking for some guidance on their average inflation targeting policy. but also what they say around the fiscal support that's needed. We've discussed on these sessions a number of times the impasse that appears to be between the Democrats and the Republicans at this point in time. So it'll be interesting to see if the Federal Reserve highlight that as a concern. That's it for today. Please join us again tomorrow. Many thanks.
Subscribing to True Potential YouTube channel is quick and easy. Simply go to your YouTube app on your phone, type in True Potential and press the red subscribe option. You'll then be notified as and when new videos are released.